This is a SnapEd New York video presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Wendy Beckman and I'm a registered dietitian with the New York State Office for the Aging and SnapEd New York. Thanks for joining me today on What's Cooking with NYSOFA. Today I'm going to be making a chicken vegetable no crust quiche. This is a great option for breakfast or dinner. We will be posting the link to the recipe below, and the recipe can also be found on the SnapEd New York website at www.snapedny.org. This recipe makes 4 servings. You could cut the recipe in half if you wanted to make a smaller portion. The recipe has eggs, chicken, and cheese, which are all great sources of protein, and there's also some broccoli and onions to add some veggies to your breakfast. Now before I start cooking, let's look at the My Plate graphic. This recipe covers the protein section and the fruits and vegetables section on the My Plate graphic. The chicken, eggs, and cheese in the recipe provide us with protein. Protein is made up of amino acids, and our bodies use the amino acids in foods that we eat to make proteins in our bodies. Things like skin and muscle cells, but also things like blood cells and immune response cells. As we age, our bodies use protein less efficiently than when we were younger, so you want to make sure to include enough high-quality proteins in your diet, and this recipe is a great way to do it. You can vary your protein routine by including animal-based forms of protein like lean chicken, fish, pork, or beef, and plant-based proteins like nuts, seeds, beans, and legumes. Remember that everything that you eat and drink over time matters. Make every bite count by finding your healthy eating style and maintaining it for a lifetime. The right mix can help you be healthier now and in the future. Before we get into the recipe, last month I made a rice bowl breakfast with fruit and nuts. That recipe is also another great way to start your day. If you didn't get a chance to see that video, you can view it on the New York State Office for the Aging Facebook page or the New York State Office for the Aging YouTube channel. So let's get into making this chicken and vegetable no crust quiche. Remember to wash your hands with soap for at least 20 seconds or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer before you start cooking. As I mentioned previously, this recipe makes 4 servings. Each serving is 160 calories, 8 grams of fat, 1 gram of fiber, and 18 grams of protein. So let's look at the ingredients for the recipe. Here I have some broccoli. You can use 5 ounces of frozen broccoli or about 1.5 of a head of fresh broccoli, which comes out to about 2/3 cup fresh broccoli. I'm using the frozen broccoli here, and sometimes that's a really good option, especially if you don't want to do a lot of cutting because the frozen is already cut up for you. So that's a really nice option, and it doesn't spoil as easily. Here I have 1/2 of an onion, and I am going to cut that up in just a minute. That comes out to about a cup of onion or so. Here I have a boneless, skinless chicken breast that I've already cooked, and you can either chop it up or shred it, whatever you want to do with it. Now this recipe would be a great way to use up some leftover chicken that you have from dinner the night before. Here I have 1/3 of a cup of shredded cheddar cheese. Look for low-fat cheese when you're shopping. And here I have 6 eggs. And the recipe calls for a clove of garlic minced, which comes out to about a teaspoon, but I'm going to use 1/2 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. Make sure that if you want to limit sodium in your diet, that you use garlic powder instead of garlic salt. And you can use more or less depending on your preference. And the recipe doesn't call for it, but I'm going to add a teaspoon of black pepper. And you can add more or less pepper depending on what you like. Last, you can use some nonstick cooking spray to coat the pan, or you can use about a teaspoon of vegetable oil or 1/2 teaspoon or so and spread it on the inside of the pan, and that's actually what I did. So the first thing that you have to do when preparing the recipe is to cook the chicken. Now, I've already done that, and like I said, it's a great way to use up leftovers, and that would save you some time, so you wouldn't have to cook the chicken just to make the recipe. Now you also have to crack all of these eggs open and put them into a bowl and whisk them together. So I'm going to do that right now. So first let's crack them on the side of the bowl. You want to make sure that you don't get any of the shells in there. We got 2, 3, Like I said, there's 6 eggs in this recipe, but if you wanted to use the whole dozen, you absolutely could do that. You could double the recipe and feed a larger group of people. That is oftentimes what I do with this kind of a recipe. There, that's 6 of them. All right, and now we have to just whisk them together. You want to incorporate them all. Get a little bit of air in there and make sure you get the yolks and the whites all incorporated together so that it's a nice, even yellow color. Okay, that's looking pretty good. All right. Now, once the eggs have been whisked, you can add in your minced garlic or garlic powder. I'm going to do that. And then the pepper as well. So there's those 2 things. Then I'm just going to stir that up a little bit more to get all of that incorporated. And that is looking pretty good. All right. Now, another thing to keep in mind is after you have handled some eggs, you're probably going to want to wash your hands. So raw eggs can be a source of salmonella, and so I'm going to wash my hands. All right, that is an important part of food safety. You want to make sure that you don't get salmonella if you're using raw eggs. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is put the chopped broccoli and chicken into the greased dish. But first I'm going to chop up this onion here. So let's do that first. I like to sort of chop it into several different pieces. Try and keep it all together. And again, try to keep your fingers away from the blade. You want to make sure that you don't get cut. I was actually watching a show just the other day, and they were talking about the importance of having a sharp knife. So it seems a little counterintuitive, but if you have a sharp knife, you're actually much less likely to cut yourself than if you have a dull knife. And the reason is because if your knife is sharp, it takes a lot less effort to cut whatever you're cutting. If you have a dull knife and you're putting a lot of pressure on that knife, you may end up slipping, and then that's how you end up cutting yourself. So I'm going to put the onions in here. So let's do this first. All right. And then next I'm going to cut up my chicken. And these are some chicken breasts that I actually had just baked in the oven. Nothing special. I put some seasoning on there, so they're already seasoned. If you were using a chicken that was like a whole chicken that you had baked in the oven or roasted in the oven, you could shred it with your hands instead of cutting it into chunks like this. So it's really depending on what kind of chicken you have available to you. But in the end, you want about a cup of chicken, and that's what's going to end up in the pan there. So we have just a few more pieces to cut. And chicken is a great protein as well. It's pretty low fat, especially if you remove the skin from the chicken. The skin is where most of the fat and the saturated fat in the chicken is. So saturated fat is one of those things that you want to limit or avoid in your diet. Usually can't avoid it completely, but we can cut down on it as much as possible. So let me get my pan that's already been greased. So that's here. It's got a little oil on it. I'm going to get rid of this cutting board. All right. So first thing we're going to do is layer the chicken and the vegetables. So let's put the chicken in first. And then we'll put in the broccoli. I'm going to layer that into the pan, make a nice layer with it. Put in the onions. Put all of that together. This is a great way to put vegetables in your breakfast. I end up not eating vegetables at breakfast very often, but maybe sometimes when I have an omelet, but this is a great way to do it. And then you're going to add the eggs on top. We're just going to try and make sure that it goes all the way over this mixture of the chicken and the vegetables. And then last, we are going to put some cheese on top. All right, that is looking pretty good there. It smells really good too. Okay. All right, so once everything's in the pan, you're going to place it into a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven and bake for 30 to 40 minutes or until the top is lightly brown and a knife inserted in the center comes out clean. So let me go put this in the oven. And here I have a quiche that I made previously. I wanted you to see what it looks like, and you can see that it came out nice and golden brown on the top. And like I said, you want to have it sit for just a few minutes before you cut into it to make sure that it's nice and set up. So I like to make this dish when I have a bunch of people to feed. It's great to make the night before and then just pop it in the oven in the morning. You want to make sure you keep it in the refrigerator overnight. And if you have a whole bunch of people, you certainly can double the recipe, use all 12 eggs, add some more veggies, and it comes out a really nice way to feed a whole bunch of people all at once. So another option is to use different vegetables. In this quiche, I actually use broccoli and cauliflower because that's what I had. But you can use asparagus or carrots, whatever you have left over. I think spinach would be really great. Or sometimes I like to use peppers and onions. Now, I hope that this recipe gave you some ideas on how to incorporate more vegetables and lean protein into your breakfast. Join me next month in April when I'll be making some Italian stuffed peppers. This recipe is a great comfort food and a family favorite. I'll be back with another edition of What's Cooking with NYSOFA on Friday, April 28th at 12:30 p.m. on the New York State Office for the Aging Facebook page and the New York State Office for the Aging YouTube channel, where you can find out more ways to save time, save money, and eat healthy. This presentation was funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and this institution is an equal opportunity provider. Stay safe, everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We know the healthy choice isn't always the easiest choice, but small changes can make a big difference. Start today by getting involved with SNAP-Ed New York. This program is free for those who qualify or receive SNAP benefits. We want to help you save time, save money, and eat healthy. Learn how SNAP-Ed can make a difference in your life. For more information and to find your local program, visit snapedny.org. This material is funded by USDA's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. SNAP. This institution is an equal opportunity provider.